Okay, well, welcome to this piece of archive film that I found on an old videotape actually, and I hadn't looked at it for probably about 30 years, and in actual fact I'd forgotten that it existed. But it's from an event at Massey Ferguson Stoneleigh in 1988 called Turf Time, and I thought I'd put the whole lot on here unedited, because it's not only shows some of the products and the people from those days, but it also shows the site at Stoneleigh, which has now been radically redeveloped. I'll talk a little bit more about the site later, but the film starts off with looking at the various different products that were on display. So this one's a Massey Ferguson 1010, little compact, 16 horsepower. It was the smallest in the range that we took from a company called Toyosha, based in Japan. Toyosha also sold them under their own brand called Hinomoto, which I think from recollection were distributed by a company called Wattveer in the UK. And all their dealings were through Mitsubishi in London. But in this particular event, we'd invited all the people who made implements and attachments for the compacts to come along as well. So you'll see Seiss is there, Ransoms, many others. The event itself was organised by myself and Roger Reid. We were the tractor marketing specialists at the time. Roger doing the big stuff and me doing the small stuff. And it was an attempt to bring the brand to a non-agricultural customer base rather than an event purely for farmers. You'll see some people in some of the scenes here. I wondered if that was Richard Beedman that I spotted just a moment ago. Not quite sure on that, but it did look a little bit like him. So we brought together the compacts from Japan and also the smaller tractors that were built in Banner Lane, the 300 series and of course the 240. One of my projects at the time had been to reintroduce the 240 with a cab for the UK and Irish markets, and that had involved a big project with Cabcraft up in Wolverhampton. The way that this event worked is that the sales guys sent out invitations to local authorities, councils, leisure companies and so on, and they then were given a slot to come to Stoneleigh along with their dealer representatives to look at the machines in work. And of course Stoneleigh was the best place for that. Now, as a tractor specialist, you always wanted to have Undergear's phone number close to hand. Undergear were again based up, I think it was Wolverhampton as well, and they could supply special sized wheels and tyres to fit onto the Massey Ferguson range. And the gentleman there, who I think appears in the film at some point, a gentleman called John Edwards, his phone number was the most useful that you could ever have. I think they were specialist distributors for Goodyear. Oh, there's John there standing at the cab of the 1020. That cab itself was another Cabcraft project, which took a lot of work working with the guys up there to get it available again for the UK market. We also worked with Duncan and Secura, or who became VCI, who became a company called Coppersat. Beaver made the little wraparound mower for the 1010, so a little triple mower, one at the back and one up each side. Worked ever so well. Very tidy combination for fine cut work. You can see the additional hydraulic tank on the front of it, and it had a PTO driven setup that provided oil for the left and right hand side mowers via a big hydraulic pump. Yeah, beautiful little tractors they were. Now Modesty I don't recall very well, but let's just have a look at the old buildings in the background there. Oh, there's a Duncan cab fitted to the 240. I had to go up to Duncan cabs near Aberdeen to help with organising that. They were a superb company. They knew exactly what they were doing, and very, very quickly got the dimensions sorted out and produced the cab, which I always thought was a very nice version of the cab for the MF240. Yeah, Stoneleigh at that time was the international headquarters for Massey Ferguson, what they called FM division, Farm Machinery Division. Also in the stable at the time were Massey Ferguson IM, based up in Manchester at Barton Dock Road, and of course Perkins Engines in Peterborough. And the same stable were Landini, based in Fabrico in Italy, and it was actual fact a couple of years later that Landini were sold off. I saw a roll bar in that Massey Ferguson 1020 there. That came from a company called Flatford. We used to buy them. It was Flatford, and it came in a flat pack. In that case, we've got a Massey Ferguson 240 with a sun canopy, a sort of export spec machine. Great little tractor, still in production around the world in Pakistan, in India, and in several Turkish factories. The 240, absolutely, classic traditional Massey Ferguson. But these little fellas with their four-wheel drive were forces to be reckoned with as well. And great little engines in them, extremely reliable, and very rarely missed a beat. They had manual transmissions and hydrostatic transmissions, and both worked extremely well. In those days, to deal with Toyota in Japan, it was all done by telex, which was quite a long-winded process, but it was the only process available to us at the time. Charterhouse Turf Machinery there, he supported the event as well. Yeah, to send the telex to Japan, you had to write it out, put in, of course, stop, S-T-O-P behind every sentence, and of course you had to keep the message very, very short, and then that was transferred to the telex operators in Banner Lane, and they would send it off to Japan, and then after a period of time the reply would come back, which was again usually very short. We had quite a job to get the bigger compacts, because we'd introduced 2 new models, including the Massey Ferguson 1035. We had a bit of a job to get them noise compliant, and the testing for that was done up at Myra, and we had to fit a different crown wheel and pinion in them, with what was called lapped gears, which was a special coating on the gears to reduce the noise. So there was quite a number of telexes went backwards and forwards between Stoneleigh and Japan on that subject. Well, there's a classic tractor on nice little turf tyres. In fact, those front tyres on it were made specially for us by Undergear on the 4-wheel drive. They were actually an implement tyre that they actually cut a groove into. So I think it was an 11L16 was the number of it, and we had some superb little tractors for ground care. The MF 350, 355, 360. Later, of course, the legendary MF 362, but they needed to be on what we call grassland tyres, and Undergear came up with the solution for that. And I remember it was a certain Mr. Mark Weatherhead. He was an extremely good business partner, Mark Weatherhead Limited, over in the Cambridge area, who gave us the first order for those. And it was really on the basis of his order that we were able to proceed and get the tyre available. And good is his word. When we confirmed that the tyres were available, he was as good as his word and ordered them, which was great. Look at those old buildings. They'll bring back some nostalgia for my former colleagues, I'm sure. And some might even recognise some of their cars that are parked in front of them. Another group of people there. My eyesight maybe isn't good enough to tell exactly who's who there, but if I spot somebody I think I recognise, I'll shout it out. Oh, there's the little Lewis loader and backhoe. So Lewis Equipment from down, I think, Bidford and Avon made a lovely little loader and a lovely backhoe for the compacts. Some bigger machines over there. There's a nice fancy car, eh? Looks really nice up the. That's towards the back end of Stoneleigh, as opposed to the buildings that were on the right when you came up the drive. Those were over to the far left. Yeah, Bumford were another company that supported us at the event, with their what seems nowadays to be called sidearms. But in them days I think we called them hedge cutters and flail mowers, but they're widely called a sidearm these days. Again, on ag tyres this time, with the Bumford flail mower on behind, looks as if it's been doing a grand job as well. I don't know what other people like, but I absolutely loved the Massey Ferguson 300 series. The MF 3000, which came at the same time, was a magnificent range of tractors, but I think the 300 was the pinnacle of what was made in Banner Lane, and that's a 398 with a Highline cab, so they've got the 236 turbo engine in it. You can tell the age of it by where the air intake is. The later versions had it up higher on the roof. Oh, and you can see in the background there as well a Massey Ferguson 700 trailer. They came from a company called A.S. Marston. I think they were in Grantham, if I remember correctly. I did visit the factory a few times. They made a superb trailer as well. The Massey Ferguson version had from recollection, a 5mm thick floor, which made it a little bit heavier duty than some of the alternatives available at the time. I might have got that wrong, but it has been rather a long time. But I think the ones we took had a 5mm floor, and the alternatives had a 4mm. But as I say, I might have got that wrong with the passage of time. Yeah, Lewis guys, Bidford and Avon. They had an excellent design on the loader controls, three-way control. So with the loader lever, you can see over in just behind the steering wheel there, it did up and down as normal. Side to side, did your crowd and dump, but then you could twist the lever to operate. In this case, you can see it's a 4-in-1 bucket, and I think that was quite unique at the time, and whether anybody else has taken that up, I don't know. The old Bostrom seat on there. The tractors came into Sea Route ferries in Southampton, and then we fitted the seats. The seats came from Bostrom. I think at that time they were based in Northampton, and we also fitted lights for the UK market. Now I can't remember the name of this gentleman, nor indeed the name of the machine, but this was a marvellous machine. It really did everything. It was you could go into the the roughest of ground and level off the soil in no time at all. I think it did 4 jobs in one, if I remember correctly, but don't ask me to tell you exactly what they were. I think there's probably people that may well listen to this eventually that could tell you that. But I did spend a bit of time watching it, especially during the setup days, in the days before the event, and I was incredibly impressed with it. Not only impressed with the machine, the tractor did a cracking job as well, and the operator from the company complimented the tractor on the work that it did. Yeah, just having a look around the rest of the machines there. There was a 2-wheel drive there, there's a 4-wheel drive. By the way, this video footage was only taken as a what's the right word I'm looking for? It was like a reference to the event. It wasn't taken with any other idea. At that time, video was very, very new, and the guy who took the video, Ivor Clark, he was at that time was one of the, I think there was only Ivor and Ted Everett at the time. They were the 2 photographers. Well, Ted always liked to concentrate on still photography, and I'm sure he took a number at the event, but Ivor was also into videography. I mean, the camera was a blinking great thing. It was like almost like a TV camera that he carried on his shoulder, and the editing suite was, by today's standards, was rather rudimentary. But he did this little video in a way so he could practice himself with the camera, but also, and I remember the word, as a record of the event. And as I say, I only discovered it a few weeks ago and took it to get it digitalized, and was quite surprised and delighted to see that what was on it, because I didn't even have a video player here to play it myself, so I could see what was on the blinking thing. Yeah, there's those machines. I knew that they did more than one job. There it's doing an extra job when you go backwards. Really, really was a useful machine, that was. And in the right hands, of course. In the right hands, because the guy demonstrating it there absolutely knew what he was doing with it. I mean, look at that. Look at the end result there. Absolutely beautiful. I think it was used in preparing sports grounds and playing fields, if I remember correctly, where you wanted to get an absolutely flat and level surface. Whoops! Bit of smoke there coming out the tractor. I don't think that was a tier 5 machine. In fact, in them days we didn't even have any tiers. They were, when the first emissions controls came in the very late 90s, we then referred to these kind of engines as blue engines, and the newer engines that were at that time tier 0 compliant, we've now moved up to tier 5. They were called green engines. So the old AD 3.152, 4.236, 4.248, 6.3544, which were the ones used in the Massey Ferguson tractors through the 70s, 80s, 90s. They were suddenly referred to as blue engines. Yeah, 1030 there now. The 1030 had been around, but the introduction at this stage was the 1030L. So the 1030L, L stood for live drive. So it actually had a dual clutch, so that the PTO. Now this is where I enter the frame myself. Driving the 1010 with the Agar equipment. Agar were a superb company as well. They were based over, I think, in Kidderminster. Agar stood for the name of the founder, I think, which was Garfield, and it was father, mother and son operation, and they made some great equipment. Yeah, what could be better than, you know, driving a Massey Ferguson, albeit not a homegrown Massey Ferguson, but a Massey Ferguson nevertheless in one of the homes of Massey Ferguson, 7 miles away from Banner Lane, and what was at the time the international headquarters. So the president of the company, or president of the farm machinery division as it was, a certain Mr. John Sword, his office would only be a matter of a couple of 100 yards from where we're looking at the moment. This airship came into view, and obviously Ivor decided that was much more interesting than watching me driving a tractor, so he quite rightly captured the airship, probably testing the zoom mechanism in the camera. Yeah, now right over the far end of the Stoneleigh, there's, I think, Roger Reid standing there, yeah. So Roger Reid, the guy at the back, and as I say, this was jointly organised by myself and Roger. Roger was ex-field test engineering. Well, everybody in Massey Ferguson knew Roger Reid. He's still around, by the way, at the tender young age of 89, and hasn't changed one bit. He was a great product guy on the tractors, and he could tell you every specification, every tractor machine that was sold. You can see him there in his red blazer. He had obviously decided not to drive a tractor during the day, but personally I couldn't resist the temptation. The guy driving the loader, who I don't think you ever get a great picture of, but I can remember who it was very well. Yeah, there's the loader. The driver's a gentleman called Pete Bott, who again was ex field test engineering, and had been latterly the field tester on the loaders, but Pete, like most of the field test guys, had a long history of, you know, working on many different products in field test at Banner Lane. He later went on to work freelance and appeared in many brochures from probably the middle to late 80s up right through the 90s. The top of his head was one of the most recognised in the world of Massey Ferguson, as they took the photographs, you know, through the back window, looking down at the operator sitting in the seat operating the controls. That was a good old bucket on there. Look at that, a good old standard, you know, bucket, you know. Could take a lot of wear and tear. Those loaders were made by Steel Fab down in Cardiff, the company Steel Fab. But the engineering for them was done in Massey Ferguson. In fact, the loader engineer, a gentleman called Jim Tibbets, he was based in one of those buildings that you can see. At one time they were kind of sort of directly over from where we're looking at the moment, and then latterly they moved down more towards the gate, but all the engineering was done in Stoneleigh under a department led by Bill Bailey. Quite a bit going over the back there, Pete. Yeah, you know. I mean, God bless him, he was one of the best blokes in Massey Ferguson that ever lived. He sadly passed away a few years ago, but he was an expert tractor driver and operator. I know that from personal experience, having done a demo tour around the country, myself and Pete, driving a Nissan Patrol that some people in the company will also remember as well. And we did that for about 6 weeks, so I can testify to his superb tractor driving ability, especially in front of the customer or in front of an audience. So it's been a great, memory jogger for me to look back at this great event that we held in Stoneleigh. Just having a look there to see if I can recognise anybody, but other people I'm sure will know who we're looking at. This was a handy machine for a roller. No problem getting that one through a narrow gate. You just did exactly what the gentleman has demonstrated, and you're ready for work. So that was also an impressive machine, and you can lift the wheels right up at the back so that all the weight is now concentrated on the roller, and hey presto, you're ready to go. A really grand machine.